Hello, welcome to Frivolous Gravitas, episode 21. Today we're going to be talking to Chris. Well, I'm going to be looking at him a bit. He can be quite handsome.
Hopefully not too much.
And Chris is really interested in talking today about ideas of right to repair. So I'll start off with a couple questions that will probably get you your brain linked to this topic a bit better. If you make something, is it yours? Do you get to keep it? Do you even get to use it? And maybe do you even get to sell it or borrow it to lend it to somebody? If you buy something, car, video game, book, journal article, is it yours? Do you own it? It has someone else's name on it, maybe Toyota or some video game maker or whatever. Maybe it says John Deere or Apple on it. And do you get to do whatever you want with it? Well, that's one thing we're going to explore. More and more nowadays, we have companies and organizations not completely driven by capital interests, but probably mostly. I'm sure there are other ones such as credit and trade secrets or what have you that go by the adage, if they can't fix it, they have to buy more. They should only be allowed to watch this once. You only paid for one viewing of this movie, and so on. That kind of stuff. So with that, let's hand it over to Chris and ask him, so do we actually have the right to repair the things we own?
Well, I'd like to think we should, and I don't think we do, and I think we'll get into that. But just before we start, I wanted to make sure I point out that I guess for today's show, I also wanted to talk about like intellectual property and patents and just the way that companies are enforcing their will and their marketing strategies upon purchasers and owners of properties and goods that they acquire. But we'll start with right to repair because it seems to me like the most egregious and topical because it's always in the news these days.
Well, it's also one of the simpler, like it's definitely a simpler place to start. And it'll allow us to
relatable, I think.
Yeah.
So to keep the right to repair discussion a bit academic and avoid devolving into another rant session, because I think this is a subject that's really important to approach dispassionately as possible so that the plight of consumers is taken seriously. But at the same token, I mean, this is Frivolous Gravitas. That's what we do. So we're going to be jokey with it.
There'll be a bit of frivolity, but we are being very grave about these
But things. I mean it. So the right to repair movement and legal action initiative, which aims at making it illegal to prevent consumers from repairing their own purchased hardware. So an example of this, I guess, in I think 2012, Massachusetts passed an act for protecting motor vehicle owners and small business repairs or something like that. It was essentially forbidding vehicle manufacturers from requiring repair services be effected at exclusive repair shops. So without it, companies try to force extra revenue from their consumers by rendering their vehicles useless, basically, unless paying an extortion fee to the vehicle maker to get it fixed at a dealership, which would have otherwise been just a standard automotive repair. So companies even try to prohibit consumers from fixing not just their own vehicles, but their own hardware devices and electronics especially. So Apple is quite known for this. But I guess since I started with the auto, it's not just the auto industry.
But I think I might have used this example in a previous episode recently. It might have been the virus one, where Megan's grandfather is a mechanic. He worked for CNN. It's not CNN, CN. And he knew how to repair basic machines. He knew how to, he built machines that he needed instead of going to buy them. You know, that kind of guy that certain admirable qualities in, handworking. But he would, if he had a car problem, he would just fix the car himself because he understood how the car worked. After a certain point, cars got, computerized, which did help them. You get regulates flow. You get all these lights that are a lot more accurate with the dials than they would have been had they been purely analog.
Carbon emissions, especially. Like a good way of keeping an engine more efficient is its firing timings, and some cars even change their gear ratios based on how hard you're driving.
It allowed us to get rid of Armstrong steering, and which I think we had a car. I think that first car I had that we used to do nonsense with had that
power windows.
Yeah, power windows, which work when it's cold. And these advancements made it so that I don't have the ability to fix this anymore. They're not analog anymore. It was beyond his comprehension, but that doesn't mean eventually it became, you have to have the certain device in order to alter the computer. You have to have, you can't get in there without, you can change your spark plugs, but if there's a light on, you have to go to the dealer or something. But even then they recommend, if you buy this car, just make sure to come back to the dealership to get your oil changed. No, get a panel, do it myself.
And that's sort of what really wrinkles my scrotum, is that the companies are telling us exactly what we can and can't do with the products that we buy. So if I buy a car and I decide that I want to modify my vehicle, as long as it's within road regulations, like it's street legal or whatever,
right,
which is governed by law, not governed by the company I bought the car from.
Right.
It should have no bearing whatsoever how I use or manipulate my car. Like if I buy a hammer, to have Mastercraft or somebody tell me how to swing my hammer or which nails I'm allowed to drive, or after 3 years say you can no longer use galvanized nails. Like just to make arbitrary restrictions on the things that I owned and purchased and tools that I used to do my business, never mind just for personal use. Even if people's livelihoods are at stake here too.
Even if you decide to go run into street signs intentionally with it and cause damage with your car, that's not Toyota's problem. That's the police's problem.
Right. That's your insurance and your city and municipality's problem.
Right.
Exactly right. So getting from that and like translating that towards things like software and electronics, because most of the way that like John Deere's doing it now is through the electronics mechanisms within their tractors. They're trying to add costs to farmers that shouldn't be there. Farmers would otherwise be able to fix their own products, but the vehicle will lock them out if they try to fix it themselves.
Yeah.
And the stupid thing about that, especially with tractors, is you can't just take a tractor on a highway, which most farms are outside of the city, obviously, and drive it to a dealership. Like you're paying exorbitant fees to get your vehicle repaired when it's not even their business what you do with it after you've bought it.
Well, you get this in video games too, where you have like always on DLC, and I don't even know if that's the right, where you have to connect to the internet. I think Diablo 3 did this. I'm only saying that because go look it up if you don't know what Diablo 3 is. Essentially what happened was they released a game that you had to be online, and you couldn't log in. You couldn't even play the game unless you were online, and you had to play on their servers, even if you were playing single player, alone without anybody else. But the problem was that the servers weren't on, so nobody could play it. So that kind of backfired on them. But like you can do the same thing with a car. Like if your car doesn't connect to the, Ford server, you can't turn on your car, which in my mind is I'm not going to buy a Ford now. And well, that's not a thing. Okay. It's not defamation. I don't know if Ford does that, blah, 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 blah. So maybe Tesla does that.
Video games are actually the worst for this. Like, to be honest, ever since they've started putting games like game consoles online, there's a whole bunch of them that you can't even start now. Even if you own the physical disc, they won't even let you boot up without being online.
Yeah.
And they do it in all kinds of ways. Like Ubisoft does it with updates. They'll say you can't play this game until you update. The update has to be done online. So you could own the disc and just want to play the release version of the game. But because they decided to rush their game out and they decided to put blocks on their downloads or their playability without updates and things like that, like you have to literally trick the system by unplugging your console before an update comes out just to make sure you can keep playing it.
Yeah, or you pirate
like Elite Dangerous does it.
Yes.
If their servers go down, the game's just useless, even if you've got the thing and everything's been downloaded and you don't need anything from their server, they won't even let you turn the game on.
Well, we're also skimming over the worst software developer, Adobe.
No, I'm not. I'm still on games. Give me a sec.
Okay.
PS3 just this year
Okay.
stopped supporting their PlayStation 3 console. Sony just arbitrarily, not because it was costing them too much money or anything, like the game servers from the PlayStation 3 compared to the PlayStation 5, you're talking like 60 gigabytes per game on a new game, 2 or 3 gigabytes per game on an old game.
Yeah.
Not even nearly costing them money, especially considering you've got like Amazon Web Services and stuff that they can run, or Microsoft Azure to run all their servers
Right.
through.
So the logical conclusion is they did it so that people stop using PS3s and they
Right, but that affects the resale value of a product that I bought expecting to be able to resell it. So if somebody wants to use, if you already have a login ID and credentials for your PS3 games, no problem. But as soon as you try and sell it to somebody who is too young at the time to own one and has never played one before, they can't create a new login. That means they can't play a whole bunch of games, and none of those games put warning labels on them saying, hey, you'll be locked out of this game if Sony ever decides to not let you update anymore.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that really pisses me off, is that they're not being even transparent about it, and they're just arbitrarily choosing for no reason. It's not under duress or because they have to. It's because they just want to cost people money because they can.
They're making an intentionally inferior product. Because I remember, well, anybody who's old enough will remember a PS2, you could play PS1 games on it. And then a PS3, you could play PS2 and PS1 games on it. And then the second generation of PS3s came out and they're like, no. If you want to play those old games, you have to buy a new version of like Final Fantasy VII, or you have to buy a new version of that PS2 game on this system. So now you have to buy this second game of that we produced, 20 years ago at, an inflated price. So they're going to charge you another $20 for it to use it on this platform.
And they'll force you to download it.
Yeah.
So you have to have servers up and running for it to work. And you can't make a backup copy subscription of it because they have DRM that protect digital rights management or whatever that protects it. But on top of all that, as if that weren't enough, they pre-install apps on your system that you can't get rid of.
Oh, so they do that on your phone
on
too.
New consoles.
Like, what the heck is Bixby? I'm sorry, Sony. Bixby is the worst thing you've ever invented. Maybe not, but I hate it.
But it's just like, what if I don't want it? Like, I watch DAZN because I love Premier League football, but if I didn't watch DAZN, it would be really annoying to have a DAZN app constantly bogging down my bandwidth and updating every week when I don't even use it, or Crunchyroll, or Disney Plus, or Amazon Prime. Like, I don't want that shit on my hard drive. I just don't want it on there.
Which is why, well, you can opt, like, if you know how to use a computer, and this goes for all of this, is that if you know how a car works, you can kind of get around some of this. You don't need to go you can change your own oil. You can change your own tires or your own rims. You can, if you know how to use a computer, you can set up your computer. Like, I've pretty much killed Cortana on my Windows 10.
Yeah, but you can't get rid of it. You're not allowed to delete it. It won't let you. That to me is the problem, because it's my hard drive they're using.
Yeah. So if I go in here, like back in the old Windows days, I used to be able to go into Windows and then, mess with all the stuff in there. Now, if you mess with it too much, you have to just reinstall Windows on your computer. But you're not even allowed to go into System 32 or whatever. I can go in. I think I got around it because I needed to get in there. There are certain folders. You
can do what you want, but the registry will, every time you boot the computer, it'll just throw it right back on there. It's like a virus that they implant on your hardware right from the get-go.
Yeah. So, I've done a lot of work on my computer that generally the average person won't know how to do in order to have my computer not have these, RAM stealing apps on them, applications, programs on them that I don't need. And you get antivirus software, which is worse than the actual viruses and stuff like that too.
Yeah, so, Norton. Yeah. Notorious for it.
Like Norton,
it's
McAfee.
Worse than getting a virus.
On your computer, get them off. Go get, I'm not going to tell you which one I'm using. I'm using an open source one. That's all I'm going to tell you. because I don't need to pay for virus services. Well, that I don't trust. So I'm not going to give them money if I don't trust them. And
there's so many examples of it too. Even with each product, it's not like they just do one little thing and they're trying to scam people out of paying them more money for things that they already own and bought. But like Sony did it right off the hop with the PS3 on their first update. Maybe there was their second. I can't remember exactly. But I bought the system with the expectation I could install Linux on it, and there was an option built into the Sony OS saying install Linux.
Yes, I
do. I was like, this is phenomenal. I can make a little computer and have a gaming console with one expense.
And if you didn't do that right at the beginning of the PS3 release, there's nothing.
Yeah. And so I bought the model that does it and made sure that it was allowed to do it and capable. And then when I finally tried to do it, it said you have to run an update first before we'll let you install anything. And then I ran the update and then the option was gone. Like, that to me is shady because I owned it under false pretense. Like, I purchased it under false pretenses. And that's what really bothers me about this stuff is how not just that they're doing it. If they're forthright with it from the beginning, saying we're going to put limitations and restrictions like a lease does when you lease a car, that's totally different from selling a person a car outright and then putting lease restrictions on them. You know what I mean? Like,
well, WinRAR still lets you use it even though you don't pay for it.
What's that?
WinRAR lets you use it even though you don't have to pay for it.
Yeah, like, and there's a lot of free software that lets you do that.
Yeah. But like the thing is that all these groups are relying on, to some extent, on the ignorance and I don't want to say laziness. It's apathy, but at some point it's like, do I really want to learn and spend the time reprogramming a PlayStation 3? Like the entire operating system, like,
they go out of their way to block it off in the firmware, right down at the hardware level. So it's physically impossible. Even if you wanted to do it, you can't. It's just like the tractors with John Deere. They will sue you. They will take you to court for violating the terms of service of the product they sold you. But that's like saying, I bought a jug of milk, but I'm not allowed to make cake with it. I can only have cereal. Like, F you. It's my milk. I can put it in whatever I want when I'm cooking.
Right.
Or like a pen, if they tell you what you can and can't write with their pen. If they don't tell you when you're buying the pen what limitations and restrictions there are on it, how could you honestly be what do you call that? A diligent consumer? How can you do due diligence as a purchaser if they're not telling you or making available the information that you need? So we've got into software and hardware, and like games is a huge one for me just because of the new prevalence with downloadable games where they trying not to sell physical copies anymore. And I kind of get it if they were cheaper.
I do personally, I like, there's a few parts of me that like having, you're using less, you're using fewer resources when, all that plastic that went into making the cases for the discs and all that stuff in the physical copies. And I'm like, oh, that's a lot of resources that we're not allocating to shiny disc covers. And, part of me likes that, but at the same time, it's nice to hold it, but it does take up shelf space. And if I move, I have to take, okay, whatever. I'm not getting into that. But one of the things about games and why it's so prevalent right now is there's the legislation around video games isn't really tight yet. We have a lot of legislation around books and authors and like art and stuff like that. But video games are especially an online video game or something that you're selling online. It's different because a book, you write it and then, your family or your estate keeps it until, it's public domain.
You know what? The only difference is people in government understand what a book is.
Yes.
They don't understand what electronics are. And that's the biggest problem is our lawmakers are so old. And I don't say that to be ageist or prejudiced. I mean, literally, they don't play video games. How would they know?
Now, to me, I understand the argument, and I think it's a very valid argument, but I think we also, to some extent, need to kind of expect our lawmakers to know what a video game is, because like my father is coming up on 80 years old, and like his profile come up on Steam playing Borderlands. It's like, it's not an excuse. And they should know. And just because their constituents don't know what, a loot box is, they should have an idea if, EA has their headquarters in their constituency.
Yeah. But here's the problem. You've got gamers who don't know anything about law or rights or protesting or activism or engagement or, and I'm not saying blanket statement all gamers are ignorant. I'm just saying most of them are kids. And most people who play games aren't studying in their free time and just playing for 1 hour here and there.
Yeah.
Most people who play games. That's why they're most of them.
Right. And that's because
and on the other hand,
to play games, and the people who have time are generally going to be the people who are younger
and less educated.
Yeah.
Just by consequence, not even by fault.
Who have the time are going to go do senior things, unless they, decided to tinker with computers in the 80s and discovered these new cool things that the kids were playing with.
Yeah. But even in the 80s, if you bought something like a dishwasher or a fridge, they give you a schematic. They'd show you with a diagram how to fix it yourself if it breaks.
Right.
That's totally different from like not only not providing the diagram, but also injecting faults into it to artificially make it degrade faster than it should. Mm-hmm. And Apple got booked on this for like their updates intentionally making the cell phone batteries look or die sooner. They didn't actually die sooner. I mean, okay. The user experience, the battery would die sooner, but the battery still had charge in it, but it was reporting to the iOS that its battery was lower than it actually was, so it would shut itself off. So technically it didn't break the battery, but if the battery is rendered useless by the hardware, which you can't avoid running because Apple won't let you run any other operating system on their phone, they're intentionally making your phone less useful just so that you buy a new phone.
Right. And Apple's actually a really interesting thing to bring up too, because, and this goes for the gaming industry and John Deere and I don't know what else we have, a couple other ones here.
Oh, the Epic Game Store and Apple Store are both in court right now over a big battle.
Yeah, well, that's what I wanted to get into, is that Apple especially is known for just lie. The legal fees are going to be less than we'll make for lying. And if you take them to court, and if you get like a bunch of people and get all your stuff together and take them to court, Apple will just be like, yeah, sure, we'll take the fine, whatever. We'll keep doing what we're doing, because they'll just keep doing it because they can afford it.
Yeah, and they have a legal team. So imagine if you keep getting the same lawsuit filed against you. You only have to do the work once to defend yourself. And even if you lose every time, every single person that sues you has upfront costs.
Right, they're poor now.
The game is stacked in the favor of the juggernaut, which is the opposite of how a functioning economy and society should work. You don't stack the deck before the court's even opened cases.
Well, and if you take Apple to court and you're in and you're living in like San Francisco or the that constituency, guess which way they're gonna but we're in Canada and we still have to deal with these same issues, and so you get products that don't reflect this. I do have a few good examples. I don't know if we want to go over
their power connector. So on their laptops where the power connects into the there's just this tiny little chip that burns out because of the heat from the power that goes through it, right? Or
the stand that they sell people for $1,000.
Yeah. So they this $10 or $8 part or whatever, $8 US, $10 Canadian, this $10 part that any person watching a 10-15 minute YouTube video could just fix themselves just with a video in front of them. That Apple forces you by contractual agreement from when you bought the device to go to their Apple store, and the Apple text will say it's fried, you need to buy a new one.
Well,
or we'll charge you $1,000 for labor, parts, and we'll have your device for 5 days.
How long?
Assuming you don't have to mail it off to one of the repair depots.
Here's the other thing. Try charging your phone with a charger that didn't come in the box with the phone. It literally takes 3 times longer.
Yeah, that's something to do with power regulation, though, because the ones that come with it are higher amperage, higher voltage to do fast charging. But
But I feel like these are a lot of bad examples. I'm trying to think of some good examples.
No, spitball.
Um, so one of the things that I'm noticing is that you can repair these things yourself. Now, there's two things, and there's going to be very Jordan things. The first thing that comes to mind are firearms and firearm optics. Now, generally, when you buy an optic, like a scope or a red dot, and you break it, that company will fall over backwards to just send you a new one. Like, oh, I dropped in the gravel on my driveway, and they'll be like, don't care, here's another one, send us the old one. Like, they won't even question it. There's like no questions asked. Like, the warranties for your lifetime, and it's like, we want you to just use this forever. You're buying an optic, you're getting an optic that should last what we said on the box, and if it doesn't, and like, we've heard, like, there's always stories when you go and talk to them about them, they're just like, oh yeah, this company will, like, they won't even ask you, they'll just replace it. And there's always like urban legends of them giving, like, some guy like opening it intentionally and them just giving, that kind of stuff. Like, more
McDonald's
customers
does that. If you
Right.
walk up to McDonald's and say, I don't like this burger, make me a new one, they don't even ask you why. They'll just
Starbucks does the same thing because they can eat the costs.
Yeah.
Now, an optic company doesn't want to, like, they have a complicated product. Like, light refraction is very precise science, and they need their product to, they need their company to be seen in a very specific light because of, the political stuff, but as well as, hunters talk to each other. People who shoot will be like, yeah, I bought this one company, don't buy them. They blah, 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 blah. So they'll talk to each other, and they know this. And so they're saying, okay, we just got to stand by our customers so that they keep buying our products. Go figure. Now,
so it's not that it's a bad example. It's just that it's a more complicated example, just because of the safety component. Like, an uncalibrated optic could be a safety risk if you were, you're not supposed to be aiming where there's, a propane tank 2 feet over, but
yeah,
you could accidentally shoot someone, or missing your target is kind of important with a firearm.
The other thing, the firearm itself, and I'm not making any political comments about this. This is just the way that you buy a firearm, you buy a rifle, and you will be able to take it apart piece by piece. Some of the parts, like, you probably won't be able to remove the barrel from the upper receiver, but like, that takes, some special tools. But generally, you can, what we call field strip it, which is you take it apart so you can clean it, so you, the owner, can keep it in good condition. And that's one of the things that's expected in that kind of market, I guess, is that you buy something, you take care of it. And that is, and
they'll give you instructions, they'll teach you if you want, they'll feed you resources.
Like, a better company will provide you with books on,
as much as you want, they'll help you.
And they'll tell you, like, exactly what and where and how. And that, I think, is the epitome of what we should be expecting from companies. Because you buy a computer, like, I built this computer from parts I bought. Yes, I can't build the circuit board because of the fact that I need to build a circuit. You need
ultraviolet lithography.
Yeah, you need stuff that is so specialized. You need an industrial base, a very high-tech industrial base. But I buy the components that do a certain thing. I can learn how they work, and I can put them all together, and I can tinker with it. And now I have this box, this computer. I could actually build the box that it goes in, but it's, you have specialized one with, like, nice hooks and little levers that hold the wires and blah, 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 blah. It's got, like, vents for this and that. I don't want to spend my time building a box, even though I could. And so I buy a box to put it all in, and I put it all together, make sure it's working, and then I install the operating system. Or you could just buy an Apple and have it on your lap, which is nice if you're a university student. But the thing is that there's no reason for anyone in our society to not understand basic computer science. You're using this tool, like, yeah, okay, you pick up a shovel. Okay, I understand how to use the shovel. I put it in the ground, this, and then after a while using, you, like, learn better techniques. And after, you don't need to become an expert with a shovel. But if you've shoveled a bit, you can pick up any shovel and use it. Now, you're going to be using a computer your entire life, period. Even if the world falls apart, there's still going to be computers. It's just tough.
all TVs now are smart TVs. They're all computers.
Which is why I got a projector. But
so going along with that, if you don't mind, I just quickly interject there. Is with computers, if you don't want to learn all the parts and how to put things together and like finesse the box and jimmy all your wires, you can still buy a pre-built computer with stuff put together. And after you buy it, 2 years later, once you learn how to use it, you can still open the case and put in a new PCI expansion card.
Right.
Like there's nothing wrong with that with a PC.
Right. You just need a screwdriver.
Yeah.
Like, and
you can just stick your head in and look at it, and all the parts are identified. They've got like bus widths written on them. They've got model numbers you can look up, so you can find
even on the outside. It's like square peg goes in a square hole. All the holes are like color coded now.
Yeah, and they do that intentionally because people are buying parts for their computers. Even if you don't want to, the option's still there.
Yeah,
and the thing about Apple is once you buy it, you don't have the option. So you're basically getting a lease on your hardware. And that's fine if you agree to it up front. But if you're going to update a 30-page legal document of terms and services every 2 months when you update every one of your products, nobody has that much free time. That's why we're buying computers, is because we don't have enough time to do ledgers by hand. What makes you think we're going to scour through legal documents?
Well, you could spend that time, that time scouring through legal documents. You could spend that time learning how a computer works.
Yeah.
Like the thing is that on my computer, I found out I didn't need a laptop every day. I didn't need to bring this pre-made thing around with me, which had less power than I needed, than it could have had. And I realized I could just use the computers at university, and I could wait till to use my computer at home. So I just bought a tower. It's like, I don't need a laptop. I can have more power, and I don't have to have this thing on me. I don't have to be tied to it. And what's more is that I can hook remote devices up to my computer in the rest of my home. If I wanted to, I could hook the speakers in my kitchen up to my computer, have the control run to my phone. I could just be like, play music. I could run YouTube off of my computer downstairs into my kitchen. Why not? And well, what about latency? Well, now you know what you're talking about, so you're not one of these people who are going to worry about an Apple computer. Now, the other thing is that I have the option, and this is, I guess we're getting back to freedom here, which I like.
But don't say it like that. We mean it this time. Yeah. Freedom here.
Freedom.
We are indeed talking about personal freedom.
And I have the freedom to install, like, I can delete Windows on here, or actually on this one I have a Linux shell, which means I can just click on it and I have archival software on here. But if I wanted to, I could just delete Windows altogether, put Linux up, and organize it whatever way I wanted to. And what's stopping you from that? Now, the thing that's stopping is and this goes for like a car, with a video game, is that all these companies have an inherent interest in you thinking that their product works on magic. Well, how does a car work? Oh, I don't know. An internal combustion engine isn't that difficult. And like, there's YouTube videos online that will teach you exactly how, like, the engine of a Toyota, Corolla will work. And, there's a million YouTube videos that will teach you how to change and fix and clean every part of that Toyota. The only problem is that you're worrying about the body of the car having a little rust on it, when it's the engine and the wheels that matter. Now, it's the same with a computer. With Apple, say, oh, it just works, but the thing is that it's really not that complicated. You can go in and you can set it. You right click on your display settings and it doesn't show you very much, and you have all these different, they're hiding so much from you in the options and settings of your computer nowadays. If you go back to, say, something like Windows XP, it's completely different what you're allowed to do.
But even today with Windows 10, if, like, I have 4 computers that I dual booted Windows and Linux distros on the same hard drive, and
right,
you have to really go out of your way to stop Windows from screwing up everything else on your hard drive. you have to install Windows first because it needs a DOS master boot record for some reason. Right. And then when you go in there, you have to shut off, like, disable fast boot. You have to disable, and it's under power options, and then change administrator power options. And like, it's in this weird place that you can't even do a search and look up for it on its own. Well, you have to know exactly which nebulous topics to go into will give you this one little blue link on the sidebar, not even in the menu, right, to be able to disable this feature so that you can boot from another operating system. There's no reason it has to be there. Never mind default, never mind hidden. There's absolutely no reason for Microsoft to own the way I use my hard drive. It should be a tool that I choose to use on my hard drive.
Yeah. This kind of
I shouldn't have to dance around it. It's my product. Well, I bought it.
Kind of goes back to, like, Ted Nelson saying the computer is a general purpose machine. Now, if Apple says, now Apple isn't making general purpose machines, they're making university notebooks. It's like, and then like
workstations,
yeah, or whatever. And then everyone has their magical device that they have instead of learning how to use their, and then not understanding what the difference is while they're taking notes in their class when they spent, $1,000 and they could have spent $5 with a pen and pad. Like,
but what if your pen company started telling you what you can and can't write? This is why it's important, because it sounds stupid, but it's literally the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's literally the same thing as buying a pen and being told by a papermate that you're not allowed to write curse words.
Right.
None of their business what I write.
No, and like when I say magic, that's kind of, well, we know what you need to use it for. You're surrendering not just your ability to, fix the machine you're using, but you're surrendering aspects of its use. Now, it bugs me that I'm not actually the administrator of my own computer. I had to do some, like, computer gymnastics to get access to certain access to certain places in my computer. It's like, oh, you need to be, administrator, but your administrator isn't actually the person who runs your computer because Windows owns your computer. No. So I had to set being administrator on your own computer in Windows 10 doesn't actually give you full access to everything. And you have to, like, jimmy it.
And it doesn't stop keylogs either. No. Windows, every time, like, if you put a network traffic logger on your Windows system, every single day it uploads stuff to Microsoft, even though you've checked off and opted out of reporting problems, bugs, fixes, or anything like that.
Right.
All of those options I switch off from the second I install I used to be a computer technician, so I've done a lot of installs. So I turn off all that stuff. And if you set up a logger, Microsoft still uses usage statistics, and they use it for things like, we just want to make sure that the things you type in your search come up more easily.
Yeah.
That's BS. I've sent them feedback reports deliberately telling them, hey, your search engine sucks. Like, in your operating system, I'm looking for a power option and I can't find it, even though the label for that option is fast boot. If you type in fast boot, it won't find it. Mm-hmm. It'll say look for it in power options, but power options doesn't have, hey, do this for fast boot. You have to go into the submenu and then find the administrator, and then you can change it because it's grayed out.
Yeah. And
they don't tell you that they're logging your keystrokes in the background and uploading it to Microsoft servers
which is a waste of my computer
Cortana.
Yeah, but
nobody asked for Cortana. Nobody. Not a single person has ever said, man, I wish that there was a really useless voice-activated tool pre-installed on my computer that I can't get rid of.
That didn't work.
Yeah.
And that only showed me results Cortana, show me, show me this game. It's like, that game doesn't exist. Oh, wait, it's because it's not Xbox exclusive. It's like, here's Halo,
it's for
play Halo.
The weirdest things too, like, just because they're trying to make money off you. Like, my network adapter was installed by default by Windows in this last boot that I just install that I just did a couple months ago.
Right.
And Microsoft installed it wrong, or something happened, so the Wi-Fi wasn't working. So you think I could go through a device manager or something, uninstall, and then reinstall it? There's 6 different places where you can do this, and only one of the 6 places worked. Mm-hmm. Like, improve that. Why are you recording my conversations when I think my computer's off to try and help me have a better experience when you won't even change basic things like uninstall and reinstall a driver without going through some stupid prompt of like a troubleshooter because the manual version doesn't work anymore.
Well, like, and this kind of
there's just no reason for it.
This is kind of scary when like scary is in like, but like if we say, you know, I've heard like car companies want to track your car now or something like that, or cell phones want to make sure that, you know, you can't turn off your well, if you turn off your if you turn off your location on your phone, are you actually turning off your location? That's kind of the thing, is your cell phone like tracking wherever you want. Now, right now there's legislation to make it so that you can't track, but like there's one thing about, and I'm sure there's a lawyer or something listening that's going to be like, but it's not illegal if you don't get caught, is one of those things. Now, doesn't mean it's right, but if you are spying on somebody, you know, also, you know, to my CSIS and FBI and NSA agents, I say hello. Please like this. If you're going to spy on me, at least like and share my videos. Come on.
Yeah, count us as a view at least.
Like, you can comment. Like, we know you're there. So use a VPN, look up Tor browser. It's not, you know.
See, the really sinister part of that, though, is when a vehicle is tracking you, the only thing that they want to know that for isn't for engineering purposes. They've already run through all their quality assurance to make sure their vehicle will last long enough that they make money on the sale of the vehicle.
Right.
What they're actually trying to do is sell that data to an insurance company so they can set your premiums based on how well you drive. Like, that's not right. That's like,
you are content and you're not like, they're
personal.
selling. You are working for them and not getting paid. You are not getting like, that is so.
So it's not like a brand or a logo on a t-shirt where you're advertising knowing that you're buying a Nike shirt with a Nike swoosh on it. See, that's up front, because when you buy it from the store, you know it's a Nike shirt and you know you're going to be a brand, a logo, and you're walking around advertising to it.
Well, you know who made it, you know how it was made, you know that the only people that got paid for it were the designers and the owners of the company,
and not the children that are starving.
The shippers got more money than the people making the shoe.
That's true, actually.
And like the truck driver is making more. And not that truck drivers are bad. It's just, if you're a truck driver, you know, you're lucky.
You're not a child slave laborer.
Right. Now,
if you're going to be a child slave laborer, you should at least get paid for it. You should be able to afford food.
Yeah. And like not work in a place that, well, that's the other thing, is that
with suicide nets.
Yeah, that's what I was going to you have these things that don't allow that almost like enslave their users. And that's okay. That's hyperbole, but they essentially,
not by the definition of slavery. It's true. Coercion.
But it's deception, because they enslave their users to acting and using their products in a certain way. So you are limited in your action of their use of these things. So, you know, I use it for this and that and this and that, but like you use it in a certain way, and you're limited by your access to their peripherals, blah, blah, blah. But then it's made by, you know, you're buying the aesthetic and you're buying the experience of the Apple Store, which is shivers. It's just, I don't trust it. And then it's being made in this clean fashion, but we've seen, there's pictures, you can go look online for it, and behind that clean, pristine facade is you know,
Foxconn.
Is Foxconn and suicide nets at the factory. Why are there suicide nets at the factory? Well, you can figure that out on your own. But the thing is that people buying this, the university students who are so righteously indignant over, you know, well, look at the news. Don't look at the news. Don't watch the news. Go outside. Stop watching CNN. But then they are not paying attention to the reality behind the product they're using themselves. Like, they're like, you know, if you go buy clothes and it says made in China, guess what? if you buy clothes and it says made in the USA or made in Canada, well, those people got paid and they are functioning members of your community. And you're probably paying more, but That's the thing, is even if it says made in Japan or made in Taiwan, Taiwan is a first world country. Like, fight me, China. But
And even if it wasn't, like, we're all human beings. Why should it matter if somebody's on another border whether or not slave labor is okay? We're morally opposed to it. We should just be morally opposed to it. Period.
Right.
It shouldn't matter if it's okay to Chinese people to have children in sweatshops.
Yeah. So
it's not okay to us.
In addition to not thinking about where people are where your products are coming from, and not thinking about what tool you're using and how their tool works, and not being able to even maintain their own tool, whether it be a shovel, a firearm, a computer, a car. How do you maintain your car? Well, I take it to a mechanic. Like, literally changing your oil and making sure your tires are filled, anybody can learn. I can teach you that online, but there's like, type in, how do I change my oil? And you will have to spend $20 on an oil pan. You will have to buy your own oil, and it'll be cheaper, and you'll be able to measure it yourself, and you'll get better at it. That's how it works. You can check your own air pressure. You can change your own, like, they literally, for your cabin filter and for your air filter in your car, they literally unscrew a thing with their fingers, and then they take out the old one, and then they literally drop in the new one and not screw it back in with their fingers. You can do this.
That's exactly how computer tech repair works.
Yeah.
Just push the little tabs to release it, plug in a new one till the tabs clip in.
Yeah.
And then you turn it on and see what happens. So, just like a car. If
you're watching this, you can do this, like, type into Google or any non-biased search engine.
DuckDuckGo.
Yeah, I keep hearing, go use DuckDuckGo for some reason, because
it's just they don't track you. So
they don't track you, and they give you the results you're looking for, not the results they want to give you.
Not really. They're not very good, but it's the price you pay for not being tracked, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, you're going to get better results if the thing knows exactly, like, what languages you speak, where you shop, where you live, how much things you buy.
Yeah. Like, I do actually want to buy, in referencing an old
but you can opt into those types of things on a different browser.
I do actually want to buy Generation 3 Super Hornet. Like, that would be pretty awesome. So keep advertising those to me. Yeah. McDonnell Douglas, if you're watching this, please call me. I don't even know.
So part of this problem isn't just freedom, it's also privacy. And and one thing I wanted to mention is I hear this argument every single time I approach somebody with the opposite point of view. And I'd really like to preemptively nip it in the bud, because it's a terrible argument. So with respect to privacy and, like, phone tracking and things, we talked a bit about the cars tracking you for the insurance. Well, phones do it too.
Yeah.
Like you said, if you turn off the Wi-Fi thing, you're still sending out data constantly. And telemetry and metadata is very easy to aggregate. Now that you've got machine learning and neural nets, you can see our past video if you want.
Yeah, if you want to go into this more too, actually Snowden's new book was actually a really good introduction for this. I read it, and then I was like, we need to get a VPN now. And then I was using Tor browser 20 minutes later.
Yeah. But so the argument I wanted to bring up was, they say, like, if I'm not doing anything wrong, who cares if they're watching me? And the problem with that is, like, okay, I'll just summarize it in one statement. If somebody said, well, we're going to put cameras up. I work for the government. I'm going to put cameras up in every bedroom in the entire country. But don't worry, we'll only look at the cameras when if you go missing or if somebody tries to kill you. Well, there's still going to be a camera that the government controls watching you have sex and masturbate and take a piss.
But that, like, if they don't actually catch anything, they'll, like, well, what are these cameras worth? Well, and so.
But who wouldn't feel uncomfortable with a government watching them have sex in their bedroom?
Right.
By law.
Like, who is the government to do that? So, like, if it changes, like, observation changes behavior. We know this from psychology. Like, every first year psychologist who pretends that they understand it now knows that, by watching watching an experiment, you change the behavior of the people in the experiment. I don't know. I forgot the technical word for it. Subjects. Thank you. And so but, like, the thing is that if I know there's a camera on me, I'm going to act differently. And the thing that happens is my stress level automatically goes up, innocent or not, doesn't matter. My stress level goes up. Stress
causes health problems.
Which leads me to fear, which makes me act more irrationally, and like
more prone to illegal activity.
Yeah,
ironically.
Yeah, and like even like what do you call those? Like the red light cameras. Like I'm a bit of a rough driver, but I fall like I'm rough within the rules. I just take my turns a bit aggressive, and when the light turns green, I tend to press the gas pedal a little quicker.
But that's a good example too, because like in that case, we're trying to leverage people's anxieties to drive more cautiously. So when they put up a camera, it's not just to make bank on catching people. It's to make everybody who doesn't get caught check their speed too. Knowing there's a camera there, every time you go by it, you're going to double check your speed. That helps lower speeding. So like we know well enough that this psychology exists and we can use it in our favor in social context. But for some reason, when the capitalist market takes control, suddenly we want to give all the rights and powers and privileges of privacy towards some non-existing, non-sentient entity and give them the legal protections under the law. And all the people who pay the taxes to support the law are the victims of it. And they're also being
assuming
exploited.
That company will exist in like 30 years. Like the companies we have now, Apple may not be here. Like they might go bankrupt. Like Disney could easily just like make terrible movies into a hole and become completely irrelevant to sell their assets off in 10 years.
Or have an entire business model surrounded on tourism and travel like they do. And then a pandemic hits, like you've got no cruise lines, no open parks.
My heart bleeds for them.
Yeah, exactly.
But like at the same time, like Facebook, like there's going to become an innovation in like 2-3 years, probably as as these things go. There's going to be an innovation in a couple of years that's probably going to make Twitter and Facebook completely redundant and useful. And everyone's gonna be like, well, why would I use that when I use this? And it's kind of like how streaming destroyed the pirate industry, and the pirate industry forced the media industry to get good, or well, some of it. And so you have these, like, we're assuming that these companies are something that we need right now, and so we're regulating in favor of them when we should be regulating abuses. Well, we should be regulating abuses of these companies can make, and be encouraging competition between them, because, you know, they're not going to, the only reason a lot of these things can do it is because they have pseudo monopolies or territorial monopolies. So
or monopsonies or duopolies. Yeah.
Monopsonies. I don't know this one.
It's a technicality.
Okay. Yeah.
Not important.
Oh yeah, I think I remember this. It's not worth getting into.
Something that's not technically a monopoly but acts as one.
Yeah. There's like reverse monopolies and stuff like that. Yeah, anyway. So because like you can do whatever you want if you're the only game in town. But right now, like Starlink is about to like go online all over the world, like allowing like 6-7G or whatever you want to call it. I don't know. It's like very high speed internet wherever the heck you want. And there's actually multiple different versions of this, you know, satellite internet that are about to be coming in. They just have to like get the paper.
Well, they've had it for years. They had a bad model before because their satellites were too far out in their orbits.
Yeah.
So they had really slow connection speeds, whereas Starlink is using a whole bunch of satellites in a really near Earth orbit so that they can get higher speeds out of it. But there's still competition in the market.
Oh, there's still that like
you still got Viasat and Dish Network,
right? And that's not the only game in town, which means us internet users are gonna, in a couple of years, gonna be, you know, laughing because of all this competition, all these people trying to bend over backwards for the user, like, use our system. It's like, I can't wait.
That's progress. That's how we get better as a people. That's how we get cheaper service, better service, and companies get big because they deserve it and they earn it.
Use my service. Why? Well, because I just installed this new stuff. I just made a new G, and I paid a bunch of guys to come up with new internet technology. So use me, and I'll be like, sounds cool. What are you going to charge me for it? Slightly more. That's what I want to hear. And because I can still go use these old I can still go back to 5G now if you come up with 6G. Right now I think we're at 5G, which is pretty cool. We can do this. And
the thing is too, like, you had said something before I just wanted to pick on. You said streaming killed or destroyed piracy or something to that effect.
Oh, that's specifically like
movies, I'm thinking.
Yeah,
right?
I'm saying movies because before, you pirate movies and you wouldn't not because
yeah. I wanted to bring this back because this is the same argument they used for Napster back in the 90s.
Well, it was just more convenient.
Well, they were saying that artists were losing all this money and record companies were losing all this money, but only reason they were making so much money is because they were defrauding people of money.
Yeah.
They were forcing people for 1 or 2 songs to buy 20 of them on one album for $20.
Right.
So yeah, of course you're going to lose money when people only want one thing and you're forcing them to buy a whole set worth of them. So Apple comes in as the big shining hero selling one song at a time. What happens? You get the degradation of music and the degradation of the music industry. But the music industry's never made more money with fewer artists. Mm-hmm. So like, who benefited from this? They have fewer contracts, fewer artists to sign, fewer scouts. All they have to do is wait for somebody to get popular on their own and then scoop them up. Yeah, their job has never been easier since.
It all sounds the same. Meanwhile, you have actual artists on YouTube right now self-publishing, and
they compete fairly.
And like they don't care that they're not selling. Like it's like, oh, a couple cents a song, and they're just like, I'm in it for the music, and it's like that's what we want to listen to.
Yeah, like my album pays a royalty. I get a few cents when people stream it on Spotify or whatever. Like I didn't write the album to make money or get a record deal so I can go on tour and stuff. There are a ton of artists out there who just want to produce music for the heck of it.
Yeah,
they don't need to be signed to get a CD or an album out, and like self-published authors is the same way.
Well, and like that's the industry is relying on the established, the established infrastructure and the momentum of that. Even though there's better ways to make, produce, release, like they've got this hype machine that people sink themselves into, and they put that hype machine on your Apple computer and on your phone. Look at this, buy this thing, and it's like if you turn that stuff off, and you can just listen to whatever you want, but it's outdated. The medium is there's better stuff out there, there's newer stuff out there, there's more interactive stuff out there. And they don't want you to know that. Okay, that sounds like a conspiracy. They don't want you to know, but there's people actually doing good stuff out there. But with movies especially, and I know it's because I ran a video store, which was outdated when I was running it, but it was easier and more time effective for everyone involved to just pirate the movie. And then Netflix finally came up with this streaming service, which was available because of these these more efficient and more effective internet infrastructures that just made it easier to just give Netflix a bit of money and then just watch whatever you want. And that became easier.
Slight correction there, though. Netflix was originally mailing people DVDs and you'd mail them back. While you were running your video store, actually, they were competing with you that way.
Oh yeah, they were. And
but half the time you get a disc that's so scratched up you can't even watch it, so it wasn't even useful.
Right. And so but Netflix is a smooth service, and that's why people now it is, and that's why people use it.
But here's the thing. So and it makes it complicated too, because Netflix is running off of React framework, and React framework is what Facebook built to run Facebook.
Right.
So Facebook has this case where, yes, we've been selling and stealing and scraping everybody's data, and we've been making a killing off of it.
Not paying
but because of us, Netflix has a platform that runs smoothly. So like,
innovation's a funny thing.
It's not always cut and dry, but in certain situations it really, really is. Like the phone companies didn't build the phone networks. Public taxpayer dollars did. Mm-hmm. So to have the phone companies then monopolize the internet when all we had was dial-up, that to me right there is an obvious point blank. Well, if the customer paid for it and you're charging the customer for what the infrastructure they paid for, you're double dipping. That's theft, in my opinion, or fraud if you're not telling them. But then you get broadband, so cable companies stop now because of streaming. Cable companies don't really have to sell cable TV packages. They can sell bandwidth, and people can buy streaming services. But they had a monopoly for how many years where if you wanted one channel, you had to buy a whole bundle of channels you didn't want. They forced people to overpay for shit for years, and they made bank on it. And now they're whining and complaining they can't keep doing it.
Well, it's like
they never built those cable infrastructures.
Well, and
Taxpayers did.
if I was Major League Baseball and NHL, like I wouldn't even be talking to cable companies. I would be starting to make my own like sports streaming service. We'd all get in it. Like I'd go to like football, baseball, soccer. We'd all get together and be like, why don't we just make our own sports streaming app? We can charge them less, make sure it's good. We'll be making more because there's like fewer middlemen. We'll be controlling our own service. We can still do advertising.
And you can license it out to people on TV still. Even if they want to buy it and only watch on TV, you can still give it to them on TV.
Like let ESPN and ABC and like all these, let them die. Like competition. The people will find new jobs, better jobs. You can hire the people working there. You still need all those men. You just don't need the middlemen. And like the people that essentially liaise that still get like hundreds of thousands of dollars a year.
Yeah, and that to me is a big frustration too, is the compensation, the rewards that they're offering the people who set up these monopolies is like they're geniuses. Like, oh, you've changed the world, Bezos, by selling things below cost and then reselling people's data, surreptitiously under the table. How genius are you that you fixed everybody's consumer problems? Like, you didn't do anything new. eBay and online stores have been around but they just didn't think it was morally sound to extort and bilk money out of their customers.
Well, it's like
at the expense of all my competition.
Well, it's like the Uber model makes sense long term if you like Uber is essentially, it looks like their business model is waiting for self-driving cars. So they don't actually care about their employees because they're not employees. So they found like pretty much an unethical loophole to essentially crowdsource people's driving around. But
why aren't taxi companies doing this? Like, more to your point, like why the networks didn't set up their own streaming services first. They waited for someone else to do it. Like, this should have been in the cards for years. They should have seen it coming and been like,
well, innovation is actually extremely, like, it's hard to think out of the box. And if you're running a taxi agency, you're not going to be thinking about how can I innovate, even though you should. You should probably be hiring someone to say.
If you just watch the show Taxi from like the 70s and look at a dispatch center today, they're the exact same thing.
Oh yeah,
it's a person with a headset and a little computer with car numbers, and they're just, this person goes there, this person goes. It's that simple.
Yeah,
it could have been automated by now. You didn't even need a dispatcher.
Right.
You could have an IT professional looking after the dispatch software. They just chose not to innovate. And it's not saying like they had to invent something that nobody thought of before. All they had to do was produce something that everybody knows is possible to produce.
Right.
They just didn't.
So like, but then you say, okay, these, at least in Winnipeg, I remember you get all these immigrants and they set up a taxi company and then they don't want to innovate because they're employing more of their, family and friends. So they don't want to change that. But the thing is that if you are in a stagnant business, your business becomes more and more fragile as time goes on. And all of a sudden, instead of having fewer people working for you, just because you have to fire a dispatcher doesn't mean you're going to hire someone else. You can hire more drivers. But just a lack of innovation will lead everyone in that business to be unemployed rather than a couple people. And
it leaves the people to get worse service for more money, which is contrary to the entire point of a market.
Well,
our market systems episode.
And it lacks, and it incentivizes the employees of these stagnant companies to not innovate themselves. There's no incentive to become more than you are now.
They don't even smile when they're speaking. Like, you can tell how, I don't know if it's every city, but I know Vancouver, Toronto, and Winnipeg and Edmonton for sure. When you call a dispatch, hello, where are you? Do you want a car? Okay, it's coming. Oh, how long is it going to be? Click. They hang up on you before they even tell you how long the cab driver is going to take. Like, they're so rude. They don't even try to have good customer service because they know they have a cornering the market.
Well, even couriers are better because like they know that when I was working when I would be like dispatching paint to a work site, it would be like, I'd call her up. It's like, hey, how's it going? And I'd call the one who would be nicer to me and would be able to get the stuff there on time. And I'd call them up, and if we could learn each other's name, that's usually a good sign. But yeah,
we're social creatures. Relationships matter to us, whether we want to be practical about it or not. But the practical experience of a relationship is that you just enjoy life more. Mm-hmm. It is just easier to get along with people that you work with. So to have people owning and operating a segment of the market without any competition or oversight whatsoever, but to have them also coercing more money out of their customers, that to me is criminal. There's no two ways about it. And the law is protecting them because they want to be business friendly or whatever they call it politically. But all that means is they're getting bribes, donations from companies to not adjudicate on disputes.
Well,
and that again is it's antithetical to the purpose of lawmakers.
I kind of want to bring it back a bit because it kind of reminds me of I noticed something that I was talking about earlier from this, is that when you go and buy a car or an Apple computer or something, right? You're buying the whole thing. Now, used to be, okay, I'm not saying like, oh, the past was better, but like we can still do this, is that you couldn't buy parts for things. And if in the firearms industry, if you need a part, you go to a firearms parts store and you can buy the smallest, stupidest part, like the screw, a little pin, whatever, because you are expected to maintain it yourself. And the same goes for cars, where you buy a car and, it's like, oh, I need this kind of spark plug because something's wrong. And you can actually go to like Princess Auto or Canadian Tire or whatever, or Part Source or whatever, and buy the parts for your car yourself. Now, some of them are a little harder, but you can still do it. And this is becoming more and more de-incentivized. You go to Shaw or Bell or MTS or whatever, and they say, okay, we're going to buy you a modem. You can buy your own modem. You can buy your own router. You can set up your own network and say, I plugged it in, give me service. And they'll be like, oh no, but we want you to use ours. It's like, yeah, I bet you do.
But they don't tell you why. And again, that should be criminal. Like if I walked up to my neighbor's house or up to your house and said, hey, can I borrow your lawnmower? And then I borrow your lawnmower and then I start looking inside to see like how much you've been using it. And then I start telling everybody around the neighborhood how terrible you are at maintaining it. You didn't lend it to me so that you'd get a bad reputation in your neighborhood.
Right.
Had I told you up front that I'm going to like tell everybody how terribly
sell this, the neighbors are going to pay me to know more about you. But like I remember we went into Shaw to get internet, and I asked like, well, how fast is it going to be? Like how many, megabytes per second? And she's like, and she's like 4. And I was like, excuse me? And I was like, 4 what? And she's like, what do you mean 4? Like 4 mega
bits,
like MBS. And I was just like, okay, per what? Per hour? Per like, well, I don't know. And I was like, is that bits or bytes? And she's like, well, I don't know. Like, and I was like, okay. And I literally explained to her, because I'm an asshole. But like, they're
you're a teacher.
Yes, it's different. So I said, like, this poor girl at Shaw is like, I'm telling, okay, a bit is a 1 and a 0. 8 of them becomes a byte. Oh, it's bits. And I look and it's bytes. And I was just like, why should I trust you? You're not like, they are a face. They are not they're there to be pleasant and happy and there's no substance. It's the same at a bank. They like, what's the interest
rate? The banks are the worst. Like as a person in finance, when they try and sell me their stupid little mutual fund packages, and oh my God, it drives me insane. Like, are there passively managed or actively managed ETFs in here? It says that there are exchange traded funds. I'm like, yes, I know. Are they actively managed or passively managed? I think maybe a bit of both.
Guess.
Like, what do you mean you think? You're a financial advisor. Nobody goes to get advice that says, hey, what should I do? Maybe you should get surgery. That might be important.
Yeah. And like it's inherently magical that they're making it's like, oh, it's this thing that we know. We are the priests of the computer. We are the priests of cars. We're the priests of
the overlords of knowledge.
Yeah, and don't ask us how it works. We're the Microsoft priests and the Apple priests and the Nike priests and all this stuff. Like, you can fix your own clothes. Sewing machines actually aren't that expensive. Or you could, like, if it's for a small rip, I was, with sewing. Needle and thread, just like, oh, I got a hole in the seam. That's a very simple thing to fix. There's harder things to fix, but you can, like, sewing machines aren't that hard to use.
Or you can use that rip shirt when you're changing your oil.
Yeah.
Oil changes are messy.
Yeah. I've like for cleaning my firearms, I use like all those clothes become like gun rags.
My mom's actually making a whole bunch of masks with like reused 100% cotton shirts. She's made like 500 now just to donate to people. Just a shout out to my mom.
So like, this is stuff you are capable of doing this. And I think like but we are like, I know all these students, and students are some of the worst for this because like the lay person, my job is to shovel stuff. It's like, okay, whatever. A plumber doesn't, like, they need to, I'm going to make a new argument. Pause, rewind, start. Okay. So you get someone like a plumber and they inherently have to know everything about plumbing. So there's no magic to it. It's just, okay, this goes like this and this has a thing like this. And a good plumber will be able to know what's going on. They won't just be like, well, this is how you fix it. I don't know why. A good plumber will know, well, this U thing traps the thing and it allows this to happen so nothing gets stuck in there and it keeps the flow going properly. And so when it's off, it doesn't go. So, and you can learn this stuff on YouTube, but a plumber will know it better than you. And they'll know all the little, the little outlying problems. And they'll know how to do, weird stuff and more complicated stuff. And if there's a real problem, you call a plumber. If there's like, oh, it's kind of leaky, I can buy a wrench. That's something you can do. You go on YouTube, you find the thing, or you like open up a plumber thing, or you ask your dad. And
well, it's like changing a toilet. You can go to Home Depot, pick up a toilet, and change your own toilet.
Right. And then you have university students who are in university to learn, and they're active. And like, I'm blaming not just like, I'm not just saying, well, capitalism's the problem. No, like, individuals are also the problem here, because you are going to university to learn, oh, well, I'm going to be a doctor. I don't need to learn anything else. It's like, you're going to be using a computer every day as a doctor. Learn how to use it. Learn how it works. If it goes down, maybe you can fix it before tech support gets there. And you don't have to spend all that time. At the same time, you can learn how to plumb. I learned how to put shelves up yesterday so my cat could have somewhere to sit in the window. It's like, I could have bought shelves from IKEA. No, I had some wood lying around, and some spare stuff. Done. And we're almost being fed all this stuff. No, you don't need to learn it. Leave it to the experts. Leave it to this. Leave it to that. You can become an expert. Like, I'm not a botanist, but I have a garden.
The thing is, I'm not an expert runner, but running is still useful.
Yes.
So I could learn to exercise even if I'm not going to be a professional weightlifter.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or like, you can learn to cook without having to be a professional chef.
Yeah.
It's not prerequisite to function in your own life that everything requires some type of expertise. Most things in life, like changing light switches and unscrewing light bulbs, like, who calls an electrician to unscrew a light bulb other than a unionized workplace that has to make work for electricians?
Well, and the other thing is, you get self-satisfaction from doing it properly. And then you do it again and you do it better, and then you get more satisfaction. And then you can say, yeah, I refinished this entire room myself.
And that, on like the large scale, I think you hit right on the head. That's the biggest problem, because without right to repair, you're encouraging and incentivizing people to be ignorant, and not ignorant in the pejorative sense. Once again, I use it in literally somebody who is not aware of something they don't know.
Yeah.
And when you don't have people fixing little things on their own because they're not allowed to, you're giving them leeway to fall into their human nature of path of least resistance. Oh, I'll just take it to an Apple store then, or I'll pay extra for an insurance plan or something that may or may not cover me if it gets dust inside my iPhone.
Well, at
and
least
like this isn't just hyperbole. Like, this is what Apple actually does. They sell you a $300 insurance plan for your phone, and then what do they say? It's $29 or something at the Apple store to fix a screen.
Mhm.
But if you're outside the warranty and didn't purchase it, it's $130 to $329.
yeah.
They intentionally entice you not to do it yourself. And when you grow up like that, when your computers and your gaming consoles and your music and your phone and everything you've ever used in your life forbids you from fixing it, you can't handle real life on your own. Anytime something comes up and you get pulled over on the side of the road, if CAA doesn't answer the call, like that's our on-road service here in Canada, CAA. If they don't answer your call and you don't know how to change a tire, they just sit there and wait for someone to help them.
Well,
that to me is a social problem. That's a big problem for society when people are that infantile as adults.
Well, and cars have to come with, you can't buy a car, like they can't sell a car without a tire wrench and a jack. You can't.
But imagine if cars came without nuts. Like if you weren't allowed to take the wheel off yourself. Like how insane would that be?
Well, then you could, because the company could make their own nuts and make it so that you could only buy the specific, because like you have to get the certain wrench and they have a certain size of nut, like
and only this one tool that they build and maintain.
Well, Henry Ford did this in the early 20th century. He's kind of like, I've got a love-hate history with this guy. It's kind of more 60-40 on the hate side, but he's really interesting though. So now in Canada, we have square head screwdrivers, which is probably one of the best screwdriver head configurations in ever, just because of the nature of how it works. Now, a guy who invented it in the early 20th century, late 19th century, came up with it. Henry Ford came up to it and said, this is great. This is what we need. I want to use this in all my cars, but you have to sell me the rights that only my company can use it. You only sell it, only sell these to my company. So only Ford will have these, because he wanted standardization, but he also wanted to corner the market, because he was trying to corner the market in the early automotive industry. The guy said no, because he thought his invention could be used by everybody. And what happened was Ford came up with another one, which was the Phillips, the X or the T, depending on which way you're holding it. And they use that, which is why that is so prevalent in the world now, because Ford was, we'll mass produce this one instead, and we'll standardize this. Now in Canada, we use the square head ones because it's Canadian invention. You'll see, if you see these square heads in Canada, if you see these square heads on anything, it's probably a Canadian product. At least those things were made in Canada. Now everywhere else uses the Phillips heads, because Ford standardized it so prevalently, and the straight heads were being used by like the Soviet Union and whatnot, because they were cheaper.
There's also practical reasons, right? Like you have a flathead screwdriver, like the thing slides in and out of the track. If you have a square heads, it gets filled up with gunk, the square heads, because the hole's too big.
Yeah,
so
but the
works best because
heads,
it's
like the Phillips heads get worn really fast.
They strip easier.
Yeah, they strip so easy, and like so.
But that's exactly how Apple works, though. Like I got this little pack here from eBay for $1.99 for the whole pack, and it comes with little screwdrivers and like
what is that?
All this proprietary stuff so that you can manipulate like screens and stuff just for Apple products, because they won't let you or sell you the tools, and they invent screw heads that nobody else uses.
Right.
Just not because they have to, or because of the design, or for the form factor, or to make it work better. No other reason than to screw their customers over do they do this. Now, it costs them more to make phones because they're using non-standard screws. Now, and they do it anyway.
That part there that you just showed me was an extremely...
Oh, I could go to jail for this technically, but here, that's all of them. That's like 6 felonies right there.
So those are all extremely specialized tools. Now, the thing about a tool is that you don't like, the more specialized a tool, the more useless it is. And that's why, like, the first things you buy, like, okay, I'm going to buy a circular saw to cut things, and then I'm going to buy a drill to drill things, and then a hammer, and, you know, a measuring tape. These are things that you will use on every project. And after that, it tends to become very specialized after that. So you make coffee with a kettle and the French press. It's just a cup with a push thing down on it. Least specialized thing. You can make tea in it. You can just hold other things in it. But then you get something like a Keurig, one of those like electronic plastic monstrosities. It takes up, you know, a cubic foot of space on your counter. It looks like something out of Starbucks, and then you go and it makes subpar coffee, and that's all it does. It actually is so specialized, it is negatively useful because it takes up space. It takes up more space than it's worth. You're looking at one right now, aren't you?
Did you know that Keurig also uses digital rights management? So if you put a pod in that their barcode or whatever, like it's not a Keurig specified little coffee pod, it just won't work. Not because it can't work. It just, they choose not to let them work.
Yeah.
Just like, so that they can make people pay more money for their own product.
Right. So you pay like 50 or 35 cents a cup of coffee instead of, you know, you pay, you know, $10 for a bag, grind it yourself, and then, you know, you paying like a couple cents for every pot. And then you so it's a scam. And I remember they when I was working at Starbucks, they're like, push the Keurigs, and I was just like, looked at my manager and like, no, this is a useless machine. I'm gonna push the French presses. Those things are great. Like,
but to me, like, it's so offensive. The only software they put in my coffee maker is something that prevents me from making coffee. Like, how is that legal? How is that even like close to being consumer focused or public oriented or a social good? How is that a good? Goods and services are supposed to provide a good and a service.
Which is why I say, like, I'm kind of critical of the individual, because you're not, like, the problem is that it takes so much effort to, like, when you find something like this, if we rooted everything out one by one, saying like, you know, oh, look, here's this thing and here's what this company is doing. We, like, every company is doing some form of this bullshit. Swearing. Money in the jar. I
already did. We're done.
Yeah. So, yeah, I said asshole, but I am an asshole. So, every company does this. So to like go through litigation would actually be a waste of our time and resources, instead of like just learning how to do these ourselves.
But if companies are threatening to sue people, it's not really the people's fault for shying away from learning to fix things. And like, the fact that we're protecting these companies is the reason why people can't do anything.
Mm-hmm. And like those protections need to go away, but the market also, like, if we start demanding in the market, like, computer parts, Radio Shacks might come back. It's like, oh, like we'll start seeing resistor and like transistor stores and like, oh, I'm building.
But it's like an unrealistic demand on the consumer to say like, hey, you could learn how to do this well enough that you can take it to court and explain to a judge and a jury.
Right.
But the act of learning how to do it is illegal.
Now,
as soon as you practice and try it out so that you can explain it to a jury and explain why it's wrong, you can be tried for that.
Right.
Why would anybody learn to fix something if they can go to jail over it?
That needs to be litigated on an umbrella level. So you get all of the criminals at once instead of nitpicking every single instance. Now, if you look at something like Home Depot or Rona or something, you go in there and it's literally like, which screw do you need? Here's the screws aisle. Here's the flooring aisle. Pick your own tile. Here's some wood. Just do with it what you will. Just buy it. And this is literally what I'm seeing that the computer industry, this is like the ideal of what I want all the other industries to be, because, you know, here's like, you go into like a computer parts store and, you know, there's all these solder guns on the wall that you can be like, oh, which one do I want? And then, you know, there's soldering and, you know, all this stuff. And, you know, maybe it's too much to expect us to build our own computer chips. That's too much specialization. There is a line of, you know, specialization which becomes too much. And like, no one's going to build their own computer chips. No one's gonna, if sometimes it is cheaper to do stuff. Because like,
but why is it legal for them to build into those chips backdoors?
right.
Like
That's
Huawei
the
phones
problem, because
is
I'm not going to,
allegedly-
well, I'm not going to build my own suit. If I built my own suit, it would be 30,000 times the price. I'm going to go
But
to
you
a
have
suit.
options. You can go
Right.
to all these other tailors. But with like
Right.
chip manufacturers, you only have 3 in the world. There are only 3 places in the entire world you can get a chip made, or
2 of them are
4
in
or
China.
5 maybe. Like Apple, Intel, TSMC, Global Foundries, Samsung.
Yeah.
They all have their own fabs. But like, so fine, if you need companies to do that type of specialization, fine. But when you've got companies like ARM, who are NVIDIA is trying to buy out ARM, so a big GPU manufacturer in the world is trying to buy what is previously just been an openly licensable set of instructions for processors to work off.
Right.
Because processors are physical devices that follow instruction sets so that they can be programmed. Without a baseline of set instructions like x86 for Intel. But Intel stifled competition for decades because they owned x86 and charged licensing fees on these instructions. It's not feasible to come out with hundreds of different architectures of microprocessors.
Right.
It's just not something you should own. We're talking about move, delete, copy, like basic instructions that a computer needs to read files, save files, and open files. To make that intellectual property of a company, there's no benefit to anyone except for the multimillionaires and shareholders who don't pay taxes. Like, that's what blows my mind, is the people who get all the tax exemptions are the only people benefiting from stifling competition and innovation. And we're enabling it by protecting those rights of the companies at the expense of rights of human beings for very basic things like privacy, for tracking me, for listening to me when I don't want them to for putting microphones in my television set and not even telling me that there's a microphone in it. And then, oh, sorry, our TVs were hacked. And, people have been listening in on your television's microphone. You'd be like, my television doesn't have a microphone, but yes, it does. That type of stuff is flat out illegal. It's an invasion of privacy. It's trespassing. It's fraud. It's coercion. And it's extortion to charge repairs like Apple does for it. And it carries all the way into our food supply chains. Like Monsanto's doing it with intellectual patents on GMOs. So like cross-pollination, they sue other farmers for a bee traveling from one side of the road to the other. Just absolute insanity. Like COVID vaccines. Like, the world needs vaccines so that the world can curb COVID. But patents are the reason that we're not producing vaccines to capacity.
Yeah.
A patent should never be the reason that people die.
See our previous episode.
Yeah.
Which has actually got quite a few views.
Yeah. It's just like there's so many cases of this, and we become so numb and tolerant to it because it happens. And I think that's why I'm letting myself get a little bit testy about it, because like, not believing that this is a problem because it's not front row and center maybe in your daily life, whether it's your video games or your smart TVs, or it's your, the pens and tools that you buy, or your computer equipment, or your cell phone. Like,
well, the problem is that it's
everything
not
you do
racist or sexist or some other nonsense. It's just,
it's just greed.
It's just, yeah. And
it's not people that are starving. It's the few, the very, very fewest people who have the most money on the planet. Those are the people we're protecting their wealth. It's not like we're getting a whole bunch of minimum wage workers and saying like, oh, we need to pay them less. We're talking about billionaires who are overcharging and violating people's privacies and personal rights to sovereignty.
Because they can. It's like those old antacid commercials where they would be like plop plop fizz fizz, and then it'd be like, so the thing is that you only need one tablet to get rid of your I don't even remember what that was.
Acid reflux or something.
Acid reflux. And they made it seem like in the thing, because of the cool jingle, that you need 2. So they essentially doubled the output.
Yeah.
Or like Pepto-Bismol, which my wife keeps telling me is not a useful thing, or Cold Effects, which doesn't do anything. Yet
Cold Effects doesn't do anything.
Which
like vitamin C. One person once said that vitamin C might help reduce colds, and now people take like fistfuls of it while they're already sick, as if it's going to get them healthy faster.
Or like garlic. Like you can like, oh, garlic's good for you. It's like, okay, and then they go out and buy garlic pills at the thing. Just go buy garlic.
It's
garlic
$1
in your
for
food.
They'll go bad
Saute it
before
into
you use them.
everything. You can leave garlic on the counter and you can accidentally end up with more garlic. Like
And the thing is, too much of it lowers your blood pressure. So you can cause heart attacks by telling people that, like, oh, if you feel sick, you should take this. Well, if you're dehydrated from vomiting and diarrhea and you start drinking tea with garlic in it that lowers your blood pressure while you have not enough blood in your system, it can trigger a heart attack. So like the advice that they're giving people even is misleading. It's not only that they're saying, hey, take Alka-Seltzer instead of eating onions. They're saying, don't worry about your diet. Take a pill with an extract from it.
Don't you dare go out jogging.
And then they charge 15 times more than the garlic cost to get the non-natural, worst performing. It's unconscionable to me. But I think it's because people aren't angry about it, and this is what I'm trying to get to with this whole episode.
Because like this thing, I think we want to do in a couple episodes. We're probably going to actually bring in a pharmacist to discuss this.
But in the meantime, like for this episode, I want to make people angry about it because that's the reason the laws haven't changed. Nobody is angry about their violations. And just being aware of it isn't enough because, like we said before, lawmakers don't know dick all about, video games or apps or telemetric tracing data or metadata or, neural networks. They don't actually know anything to judge how severe the problem is. But what they do know is how much donation money they get, right down to the penny, from all of these companies who stand to benefit from it. There's no secret to why they're dishing out hundreds of thousands of dollars in campaign contributions and stuff. It's not hidden. They have to, by law, be open about it. But for some reason, we think that they're donating money for an ideological representation in government, and that's not at all the case. What they're paying for is the right to abuse consumers, and that's flat out wrong. And it's because we're not angry about it that our politicians aren't doing anything about it. So that's the two-piece.
Well, and yeah, sorry, I was looking at a quote that you reminded me of from the movie Network. Well, go watch the movie Network from 1976. I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. And then he yells it out into the night. And then everyone else in New York, because, it's the 70s in New York, and everyone else in the city just, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. And everyone, the entire block.
Such a bad reference. Whatever. But it's true.
It's true. But it's almost hilarious of a movie. But that's not really what I want to get into because they like in all of this, Apple and John Deere, they're convincing mostly like the hamstringing of farmers. Well, that won't really be helped by farmers learning how to make their own tractors, because those tractors are extremely specialized, and the new ones do things that the farmers need them to do. They do they come out with a new tractor. It's like $1 million or $2 million, and like a harvester, and it separates them and has like all these weird things, and it's like it's its own little factory that you're driving over it in itself. Now they're getting them at the bottleneck of where you have to turn it on. So there's nothing really that you can do there other than litigate. Why do I have to do this? Well, you're using our grain. Okay, yeah, it's dumb. But like when it comes to stuff like computers, if people learn how to do their own plumbing or, like make simple repairs and stuff like that, then there'll become more of a market for the people that know how to do stuff. You'll see less waste, and people will like explore your creativity with these things. Like you can build your own computer. You don't need to, and like I said, there's a line where where it becomes not about this, because like you don't need to build your own suit. You don't need to build your own car. It'd be cool, but you should be able to, you should be able to fix your own car. You should be able to, mend the tear in your own suit.
Install your own operating system.
And like, but then again, your tailor should be able to alter your suit. If he can't, for some reason, he doesn't have this or that. But the thing is that a suit and tailoring is almost immune from that, because it's all you need is a needle and thread and then the skills to do it. And a good tailor, like, if I want something changed, I will default to a good tailor over my own skills. But if I just need a pipe, but if I need to like fix a hole, that's the thing. If my entire kitchen sink is FUBAR, like, I'm going to default to a plumber. If I need to make, if I just need to tighten it and, just reseal it, that's going to be me. And it's the same for a car. If the back wheels straight up fall off my car, I can't deal with that. It's not worth my time. I'm going to take it to an expert. They're going to be like, wow, you want me to fix this? But that's the thing. They could. But if they weren't allowed to, well, just, and like even in the insurance industry, to write it off, buy a new car. No, I don't want it. This is my car. I want this old car because it's a good car. Like, I even installed a catalyzer in it, so it wasn't as, pollution-y or something. Someone said you could do that yourself. And it's negating our freedoms to do when they do this to the tools and the things we use. But at the same time, we're letting it happen by not exercising our freedoms. And I sound like a Second Amendment.
No, it's true. The onus is on us too, to make our government do what we want them to do. They represent us.
Yeah.
So if we do nothing, it's just as much our fault as theirs.
Yeah. So that's kind of...
But awareness is the first step. To know that you've been violated is the first step.
Then blow your whistle.
Yeah.
That was a bad joke. That
was a pretty good pun though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm good, because I'm just going to start ranting if I go any further from there. And I think everybody gets the idea.
Yeah. If you
there are so many examples of it though. Like, you should just look around at everything in your house and look it up online and see if there's been like a right to repair issue with it. Because I guarantee about 25% of every appliance you own has had a scandal like this at some point. And that goes even right down to like computer parts and stuff. Like I said, with x86 chips versus ARM chips.
Well, if you think you can make it better, or if you in your head can design something in like 5 seconds better than the thing that you've got in your hand, there's probably a good chance that that's happened with that technology. It's like, why did they make it like this? Oh.
Yeah, or why is this thing annoying? Oh, somebody's profiting from it. That's why. That's almost always the reason. Somebody profits from a dysfunction of a tool.
So, those people themselves are tools. So, thanks for watching. For this episode, if you have examples of your own, put them in the chat. I'd love to hear them.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, so I'd love to hear your example of the stuff that you've encountered like this in your own life.
Especially open source software, if you got it.
Yes. So
I love the open source movement. You got extra credit for that.
So we'll see you guys next week. I want to talk about something a little more esoteric. I want to talk about the nature of beauty and why it is something we've seemed to have forgotten about. And I don't know why we're rejecting it. So I want to talk about that. And in a couple of weeks, we will be bringing on a guest to explain what the heck pharmacists do and dispelling myths about the pharmaceutical industry and things that aren't myths. So
stay tuned for more.
Yep.
Same bat time, same bat channel, even though we're not consistent with either of those. Anyway, Thanks for watching.
See you guys.
Bye.